I'm Chad Harvey, and this is AI for the C-Suite, the show for senior leaders who know AI matters and need to figure out what to do about it. Each episode, we dig into what it all actually means for mid-market organizations, how it's changing decisions, strategy, leadership, and the nature of work. Let's get into it. My guest today has spent his career building companies that solve real operational problems in supply chain, in commercial real estate, in marketplaces, and then selling them. So when he tells you what works and what doesn't in AI adoption, he's not theorizing. He's lived it on both sides of the table. Chris Happ is now CEO of Virtuous AI, where he's focused on a problem that I suspect sounds familiar to many of you: the gap between knowing AI matters and actually making it work inside your organization. Before taking this role, Chris built and exited multiple businesses, most recently growing a marketplace to $10 billion in gross merchandise volume. His organization has also recently completed a major research study on AI adoption in the mid-market with Chief Executive Group, and some of those findings challenge the conventional wisdom on where companies are actually succeeding and failing. Chris, welcome to AI for the C-Suite.
Hey, Chad, how are you?
I couldn't be doing any better. How about yourself?
The same. Off to a great start for the year. People are excited. AI's top of mind, so it's an exciting place to be right now.
It certainly is. So since it's top of mind, let's talk about what's top of mind in that survey that I mentioned during the intro. So you and your organization, I think it's called the State of AI Adoption. It's a mid-market company survey that you conducted with Chief Executive Group. I'd like to learn a little bit more about that, and I'd also like to know, was there anything in the findings that surprised you?
Yeah. So we polled the Chief Executive Network audience. It's a group comprised of, I'll say, 10 million to a billion in revenue, cross-section of verticals. So a pretty good, we thought a very good view across the mid-market writ large. And so got quite a good response rate, more than we even expected. I think a lot of people were really interested in not only learning about others, but benchmarking where they themselves are at. So got a great response rate. And the most sort of the punchline that came out of this was 98% of the CEOs, so we focused just on the CEOs, 98%, yep, this is critical. I know that AI is going to impact my business. The flip side, though, and probably what's most interesting to unpack here on this episode, 7%, so 1 out of 10 or 1 out of 12 said, yeah, we have a strategy. So we all know it's important, but we don't really know what to do about it. So that's what I think if we just focus on what did this study uncover, it's probably what a lot in the audience, why they're listening, is what do I actually do? I've seen this, I've lived this, I've used the individual tools and I've seen the potential, but how do I unleash that in my organization?
And so you said 1 of 10, I want to make sure I get those numbers right. 1 of 10 has a strategy, but they're still flailing?
Yeah, so it's 7% of the respondents said we have a clear AI strategy.
Okay.
We all think it's important, but so I guess it's more like 1 in 12 actually says we've actually codified some sort of strategy or have a way, a framework to adopt this in our organization.
Okay.
And the primary use case that they were saying that came back in the response was process automation. That's where we've started. That's where we've had some sort of pilot success. So I think of that as moving data between systems, taking rules-based process and move it from sort of A to B to C.
Mm-hmm.
I really don't even think that's AI. I think that's more RPA, robotic process automation, that's been around for a while. But
Exactly.
I think that's really where people are at. And it feels a little bit magical because it's, instead of people moving piles of paper on their desks, their machines are doing it. But you and I know that's not really AI. And that's really
Right.
what they're seeing the most success. because I think it's pretty easy still.
Do you think this opens up a larger question in my mind? Do you think that the rise of AI and now the fact that this is being discussed at the board and the CEO level in ways that previous technological advancements had not, do you think that that is showcasing or exposing, maybe is a better word, the lack of advancement in RPA adoption and some of the other techniques that have been around for 20 years in the mid-market?
Yeah, actually, I hadn't thought of it that way until you just asked it, but I think that's a great point. And the fact that everybody's bored, I mean, 98% of the CEOs say this is critical. So the board, there's board pressure, certainly even just individual pressure of, hey, I know this could work, but that is forcing executives to take action. And probably the easy action is I'm going to go buy some point off the shelf solution. I'm going to buy something to sort of stop the immediate pressure that's being put on me. And so, yeah, it's probably a forcing function for some of these technologies that you and I know have worked for many, many years, just because they're easy and you can have quick success with some of them. Well, it's not the long-term strategy. You know, we're clearly seeing that in the results. People are saying this isn't a strategy, but hey, check the box at least in terms of at a board level getting. I now have an answer to what I've, to the question, what are you doing in AI? Well, I've got some process automation happening.
Yeah. That's slightly terrifying, that's the answer from a lot of folks in that, well, we're just going to go buy something and we're going to throw it in there and then we're going to say box checked. That sounds to me like a future zombie company.
Yeah. Well, and let's just play this out. So if I buy a tactical AI solution, meaning it's an off-the-shelf solution that let's say my CRM or my ERP vendor provides. By definition, everybody else has access to that exact same solution. So what am I actually achieving? So let's take like a sales AI agent. So now it's going to sell better, faster, send more emails, what have you. Now my competitor bought the same thing. So now they're both competing with each other. So I'm burning a bunch of compute and time and effort, but I essentially have the exact same solution. So not only do I have this problem where I have siloed data because I have a point solution running and it's running a process, but my competitor is running the same thing. So what did I accomplish there? Really, as you said, I probably created these like zombie AI agents that are off really making a bunch of money for sort of traditional software vendors, but not really solving the problem, which is, do I have an AI brain that's forming in my business?
This is fascinating, and I didn't anticipate our conversation going down this road even 5 minutes ago when we started. But what you've just unlocked for me here is, I just concluded an interview coming out probably within a few weeks of when your episode publishes with Pip Bingaman down in Australia, and he's got a company that's focused on providing and unlocking creative potential in AI. And one of his suppositions is that if we're all using these same AI tools, we're all going to end up with the same default crap, quite frankly. And I just heard the software equivalency of that with you with respect to organizations buying these tools from their vendors. And I hadn't thought about it. I think about the content homogenization. I hadn't thought about the process and the technical kind of homogenization, which you just shone a light on.
Yeah. Yeah. I from where I sit, and what I advise companies to do is, it's really why we're focused on the mid-market as well. If you look at the enterprise with a massive IT budget and spend, they're building towards their own AI, their own, I really call it a brain. They're really building their own contextual layer of the decisions and the cause effects that happen in their business that are relevant to, or they believe are relevant to their success. That's really tough for the mid-market to be able to do because of the budgets, the talent, the pace at which this moves. So you're focused on running your business. You can't be focused on building all of the infrastructure that is required to stand that up. But it doesn't change the fundamental problem that AI is better when it has contextual awareness. And you want to amplify your special sauce or your business differences, especially in the mid market. That's why you're there. That's why you love doing what you do, is that you're different by definition. You're not a homogenous product that has sort of achieved mass market appeal that way. And it's about amplifying that. And how do you get the contextual awareness into a brain that runs? We call it connected intelligence. But how do you start to build that such that you don't look like everyone else and your AI and your processes reflect who you really are and not what the software vendors or what the off-the-shelf solutions want you to be? Because that's really what we did. It's been called the software industrial complex. They'll push a solution on you, sell it at scale, and then say everyone's process should look like this, which is fine. But then every business starts to look the same, and you start to morph to what they want as opposed to what should my business actually do, and where do I get leverage as a business?
Well, and I think that falls right into something else that you and I had talked about in terms of the execution gap, the distance between your strategic goals and the actual delivery required to meet those goals. And I'm wondering what your thoughts are about that as it pertains to this concept that we're unpacking here around the software industrial complex and some of these, kind of pre-formatted canned processes and systems that are out there, be they AI or otherwise.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm curious as well your thoughts on what you're seeing just in talking to the group too. So from where my perspective, the execution gap is, I know as a CEO, I need to be using these tools. I can see the power of AI. I know what I want my business to achieve, but I don't have the resources or the capability. I can't invest ahead of the curve the way others can. If I could just put 10 more what historically bodies on this, or just some more technology here, I could get ahead of that. And it's just growing because the larger companies have bigger budgets and can attract more talent. So how do we close that? And so it's not about throwing more at it. It's about being smarter and creating leverage. So for me, it's very much this get my data into a system, a brain, run. How do I start to use that to create automations and then really scale it? How do I unleash this system that I've trained, this AI superpower, and then close the gap? Because I don't need, now I've created a resource leverage engine, which is now at the core of my business.
Let's talk a little bit more about that idea of connected intelligence and getting that data in the right format, the right structure, getting it organized to populate that brain, because that's an area where I see an awful lot of mid-market organizations, I don't want to say fall down, but it just hasn't been a priority. And we're generating mountains and mountains of data. Even, smaller organizations do this, yet it's not organized very well. So what are you finding as you walk into companies in terms of their data hygiene and their data organization, and how well or not well that's preparing them for this next level of connected intelligence?
Yeah. The default answer I get, which is unfortunate, the way to clean up data is an ERP upgrade, which is terrifying, right? We both know the cost overruns, the effort. It's always too long. I've never met anyone who wants to do another ERP upgrade. Right? So if that's the solve, what you're basically saying is, okay, I'm gonna go make my business look like whatever the ERP wants it to look like. And I'm going to, in essence, take all of the old mess and clean it and put it into there and move forward. The way I advise people is doesn't matter. Absolutely doesn't matter. I think the role of the ERP as a system that stores source data and puts a web interface on it, it'll move back to that sort of relegation. It'll be relegated back to that as opposed to this center of the organization tool. And so where I advise people is it is actually really easy to get data now. So the state of the hygiene is poor, but just that's what it is. There's on average in the mid-market, studies will tell you that you have 50 different applications running. So 50 silos of data costing roughly $2,000 per person per year. So you can quickly do the math on what it's costing you to have all these silos and pockets of data, let alone the hygiene that you asked about. The great news is it's really easy now to pull data out of all of these systems and use AI to pull it in and make sense of it. So a brain is actually really easy to create. So what do we want to take? Orders, customers, cause effect, things that matter in the business. I don't need all of Slack or all of my email in there. I want key decisions and key things. And I can pull that into a semantic or contextually aware layer that I can start to interact with. And there was this push where everybody had to have a data lake. And it's still happening. Data warehouse, lake house, whatever name the vendor's pushing. To me, it's completely irrelevant to do that. The tools we now have access to with AI make it that easy to pull your data in. And if you look at what a dashboard signified, it's basically, I know what problem I'm looking for. I'm going to build a report that looks for it. I'm going to make it red when it happens. And then when I see it, I'm going to have to click 3 times in to sort of diagnose it. So if you know all that ahead of time, why wouldn't you just ask an AI to look for that? So seek out that data and then send you an email or a text or something. So I don't think dashboards even work. They look backwards. If the implementation plan is, hey, I'm going to put all my data, I'm going to upgrade an ERP, then I'm going to put a business intelligence layer on top of that because the ERP doesn't do that very well. And then I'm going to look backwards at data that I already know is a problem, problems I've already solved. I'm just going to look for them. Now I'm 2.5 years into something that, we all agree is going to change in the next 3 or 6 months. So we've created a concept in our Bayo platform called a flashboard. So it's real time, it's dynamic, it's fluid, it's information. You ask the system, what should I know about today? And it's just connected intelligence. It looks at your business. It says, here's what inventory, there's an issue I see in inventory. Here's a visual. Here's what I think we should do about it. And that's just by wiring data in, let alone sort of automations and agents all working together. But I think companies I talk to have been scared away from, or the salespeople, I'll just say, maybe put a pause. There's some great salespeople in the business intelligence world and ERP world who make that the solve, as opposed to let's just go at these sources. There might be 50, pull the raw data in and start to look at it.
So let's make this real and correct me if I've got the company wrong, but I believe you worked with Muggsy, direct to consumer. Okay, good. Yeah. I got that right. So cool. Yeah. I think what you're talking about in some ways, maybe this would be a good example to make this more concrete. So Muggsy, direct to consumer fashion brand, I think you worked with them on inventory, demand planning. What did the problem look like for them before AI, and then what actually changed and what was the measurable outcome? So maybe let's use this as almost a little mini example or case study here.
Yeah. So in talking with their CEO, he had his initial thesis was AI, not too dissimilar than we started started our conversation. AI is important, but I'm not really sure how to begin this journey. So we take them through a walk, run, scale. Walk is, all right, what are your 50 systems? They had 14. You could think Shopify, Amazon, Meta, Google, email automation, inventory. So they had 14 systems, and something as simple as what was sales yesterday. If you're not talking to all those systems, you're not going to get the same answer. I sold something in Amazon, I sold something in Shopify, I sold something in my retail location, and those are multiple different systems. I don't need a business warehouse. They didn't have a business warehouse. We connect individually to those systems. Genius of AI is that it's been trained. It can pull data from thousands of systems without any code. So it's easy to connect to those. And what are you fundamentally pulling in order? Inventory.
Let me pause you right there because I'm sorry to interrupt your flow, but what you just said reminds me of an objection. I see red flags getting thrown all the time by CEOs based on the type of statement that you just made where AI doesn't need to know or, it pulls these thousands and everybody always says some version to me of, well, how can I trust that?
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's a great question. So how does it, there's a couple layers in that. I would not trust my critical business data with a AI platform or a sort of an open AI, off the shelf AI platform. I just wouldn't put my data in there because they're going to learn. I don't suggest they learn on your specific data, but they learn how your business runs. So maybe less the price, but more importantly, how do you sell, in this case, D2C jeans? Now, it doesn't mean they're going to build a business from that, but as they watch the patterns, the AI gets smarter and smarter. So I personally don't allow the AI to do that. What we do, though, is we don't write code anymore. So it used to be you would have a programmer. I need to connect to HubSpot to pull my customer data. And then I need to connect to NetSuite to pull my sales data, whatever it is. Because those APIs are available and open, AI knows how to write the connection to go back and forth. So I don't need massive teams of programmers. It's not a 3-month, hey, connect NetSuite, another 3 months, connect HubSpot. So that's easy. So that is no longer a skill. That's a commodity that I don't need to pay developers for. But the data that comes through that connection, I think that's really important. That's your data. That's private. That should live private. That's part of the way we solve it for the mid-market is that all that data, all of that pulling of that data runs in a private SOC 2 data center where you're not sharing that. So I think it's a really good point that the actual code that gets written or the way to pull the data, AI is doing, but the actual pulling of the data is private and secure. And so it shouldn't be a concern, but I certainly wouldn't just go into ChatGPT or Gemini and say, here's my password, go pull all my HubSpot data, go pull all my sales data. Here's my pricing strategy, because what would you do? Ask the New York Times how this goes, right? Like, what would you do? People are training on your IP, and that's just the way AI needs to work. Is that it needs data? It's very data hungry to get smarter.
All right, I appreciate you taking that detour with me. I know I interrupted your flow. I had asked you about outcomes and what actually changed as a case study with Muggsy. So thank you for that, because that is a question that comes up all the time. So kind of back to you on the journey with Muggsy.
Yeah. I'm glad you asked that. I think it's critical that people understand the potential there for privacy concerns. Yeah. So as we thought about the Muggsy example, so step one is let's connect our business and end up with I don't like this term, but this is the way people often think about it, is I have ChatGPT for my business. Now I have this AI, I can ask any question. Hey, what was sales yesterday? And not only does it pull the data from each of the different sources, it knows how I calculate sales. So just something fundamental, because everyone does it a little bit different. And, it's funny, a lot of these like harken back to when they started the business. There was some quirk, and, that's just permeated throughout the business. So that is step one. And a lot of times what happens in that step one, connected intelligence, is we take the spreadsheet that every CEO has that secretly runs the business, and there's data from different sources. I've got sales, I've got marketing, ROAT, those different things. And that now becomes this flashboard where I can ask, hey, what's going on with the business? I don't need to, spend an hour each morning compiling the Google sheet or the spreadsheet with all the different data sources. So now I can make decisions faster. I'm confident. I've built trust that I'm actually looking at the right information. So for Muggsy, that was step one, is before I'm going to make any decision, I got to just fundamentally trust that this information I'm getting and it has access to my data and the way I think. So that's where the brain really is formed. And well, it's not hard to get the data in. That's probably if I'm honest, a 30-step process or 30-day process where you're just sort of having a back and forth and sort of building trust at an executive level that you're getting the answers and the information that you would expect from a senior data person. And I think in the mid-market, what happens is that people are siloed. It's actually in the enterprise as well. So the benefit here too is that you get the same answer every single time, because these don't live in silos the same way. When you ask marketing, what was sales, you get a different answer than when I ask the COO, I'm going to get a different answer, and it's just skewed. It was actually funny. Our entire company, they live in AI. We use it. It's just part of who we are. If we don't embrace it, then how can we expect our customers? Even when my head of sales built a plan for me and my head of marketing built a plan for me, when I asked, the plan sort of came back in terms of like where in the funnel and the percentages where the things move through the funnel. Even building it with the same AI, I got a marketing skewed answer for marketing, i.e. more deals fell out in the middle of the funnel where sales takes over. Then sales, less comes in the top of the funnel and they're more effective. So just how they were working with the AI in their own way skewed what the AI gave it and skewed their version of the plan that ostensibly came from ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever. So it's really important to break that down and get a consistent view of your business that's unbiased. And that's really what happens with this connected intelligence phase. So that problem is solved. Now, all the while we had a use case in mind, which was, hey, we have too much inventory. The easy way to plan is to say, here was sales last year. I want to beat that by 30%. So let's just take and multiply every number, everything we bought last year times 1.3. And now that's going to be our way to plan inventory. And you could put some logic around, we know that in the fall around, post Thanksgiving to kind of the end of the year, we have more sales. So we'll do a little bit more then. But that's sort of the planning process. And as you start to go, what is the impact of buying that way? Now I start to have millions of dollars in inventory that wasn't very strategically planned. What could I do instead? If I had more cash sitting around, I could put it in marketing. So if I can be smarter about inventory, particularly in retail, I can make massive impacts on the business because there's an obvious correlation between the amount of money I spend in marketing and then when it sells. So the more cash I can free up, we have a massive impact. Particularly as you think about sort of the times we're in now, or tariffs and inflation. The value of getting this right becomes more and more important. So that was the goal. So we didn't start saying, hey, we just want this brain that's smart. We want to start to be able to solve problems like this. And that's sort of where, as we get to this run stage. And the way we're able to start getting there is let's let the model start to predict inventory. So instead of this top-down sort of goal-based approach, let's look at the history of the business and then ask a machine to predict how inventory should look. So the result for them was, well, hey, we freed up several $1 million in cash. As we back test it, it's about 95% accurate to what actually happens, what it thinks will happen to what actually happens. And so it frees up this sort of 70% sort of, gut check accurate to this very close to reality. And it just enables different business decisions to be made.
I want to dig in on that for a second. Yeah. I think that's huge. I have come across, and I don't want to make it sound like an overblown number, but I've come across numerous businesses over the years, profitable businesses that went out of business in the mid-market space because of cash management. And what you're saying here is, I know we're talking about a retail example, but anybody that's got inventory, if you can free up several $1 million of extra cash by using the types of systems and putting the type of business intelligence in place that you're talking about, man, that's huge.
It's amazing. It's amazing. It's just sitting there, and it's really not that hard. We connect in the data. Now, what do I have? I have my order history. I have my marketing history. I have the different things that have happened, and I have time. So I have a history with that. And now we ask the machine to run through that in a way only a machine can. It can run massive compute in ways that our minds can't. And then it says, here's what I think is going to happen. And it gets smarter and smarter as you can add more factors. But it turns out in less than a couple of months, you can have a very accurate prediction of what's going to happen. And then you could start to add in more and more things. Hey, what happens when I have an influencer wear a pair of jeans? Let's introduce that to the model. We don't need to start with that. We can still be 95+% accurate, free up millions of dollars, but then you can really start to do some exciting things. I think sometimes people kill these projects with, overcomplication or perfect's the enemy of good enough kind of thinking. Mm-hmm. You can get really accurate and much better than you were doing. Just think of the difference we said there.
Yeah. And let's talk about that here briefly, because I have seen a lot of AI pilots that go nowhere. And by the way, I wrote something down here before I get to that, just in case anybody kind of drove by the point that you made. I wrote this quote down. You said, the spreadsheet that every CEO has that actually runs the business. Yeah. And when you said that, it just rang so true to me, because I walked into so many organizations. They got these complicated dashboards, they got metrics, and then here's this Excel sheet or this Google Doc that the CEO is actually using to run the business. So, well, you're definitely on point with that.
That's my first use case for most people. I'm like, let's just get that into a AI system you can ask questions of.
Exactly. All right. So with that little detour aside, let's talk about AI pilots that go nowhere, because you kind of referred to that a moment ago as we were concluding some remarks there. I think you've got the idea about having a right to left or an outcomes-based approach. But let's talk about AI pilots that go nowhere. Let's talk about what the right type of approach is. For folks out there, maybe they've got AI experiments that have failed or pilots that went nowhere. What can you speak to about that here? Because I'm seeing more and more of that.
Yeah. I do like the right to left approach. Start with an outcome that matters and then work it back. And so that could be the inventory example we gave. It could be the Excel, the spreadsheet. Get that let's have a system I can interact with that understands those key pieces of information or data sources. Why I think they fail, I'll give two reasons. One, there's not CEO buy-in.
Mm-hmm.
If you are checking the box, like we said before, and the organization knows that, I think it's going to end the way where most of these pilots end, which is it's going to die in sort of organizational inertia, because this is different. This is not implementing a new report or an ERP system. AI fundamentally is a change to the way you do business, if you believe it at a strategic level. It's a thought partner. It's a strategic resource that's always on, with the ability to run massive compute and simulate a lot of different examples, and then start to give you options, which is just different to the way businesses run. We come in, we work 9 to 5, we have silos of information, we operate on that, and sort of. So if the CEO doesn't buy in, I think that's where these will die. A lot of times you have people sort of in the middle of the company who really don't want these to be successful, because it's going to change what they do. I don't mean they're going to be out of a job. It's just going to change the way they function by the nature of it, which you could view as very powerful as an individual, or you could view it as very scary. And I understand that. So that's one reason. The other reason is what we said before. If you're tactical about this, you're going to end up looking like everyone else, and you're going to end up with, I think, mediocre C+ results. AI is trained on a crowdsourced set of data. And so if you buy that off-the-shelf product, you're going to get a crowdsourced answer to your business, which is fine. AI is smart. It knows how to build a sales plan and a marketing plan, but it doesn't know how to build your sales or marketing plan. If you just look like everyone else, then what do you have? And so then the pilot doesn't feel very good. You can see the potential, but when you actually say, well, people are better because they know the nuance, they know how to get it from C+ or B- to A. We did a pilot. My mind was blown in this one, for a customer that was doing, it was a drone company that was working on helping farmers, regenerative farming. And AI could run a farm just with satellite images to, I would say, like a C+, B- level, like an individual farm. It actually told a farmer they had pumpkins growing that they didn't realize the sun had like planted this little patch of pumpkins. And it knew it just from the satellite images, and it figured that out. It still wasn't going to beat the farmer individually, but if that farmer would then say, hey, I've got this really smart thing that if I work with it a little bit, wow, the power I could have. But that's where the pilot sort of moves from, it's really pretty good, but how do I make it great? There's work there. And if you just buy something off the shelf and expect it to do better than all the people you have, and importantly, it doesn't have all the history of your business and understanding and the context of your business. If you don't give it that, it's never going to move off the pilot phase. And that's where I think people expect. It's easier to just buy something than to say, this is strategic. I'm going to wire in the intelligence as part of the phase one, because you don't get that sexy outcome then. So if you start with the outcome and say, this is what I want to achieve, but I'm going to also lay the foundation. What we'll actually do with our customers, we don't let them move on and don't let them pay us more money until they move through the phases, the walk, the run phase, and the scale phase. So in walk, we say, we're not going to write data to a lot of other systems. We're going to help you build trust and get the right answers. Then as you run, we're going to start to automatically write information from system A to system B. And then the final stage is you're starting to let the agents make decisions and reason and start to do things on your behalf. but you'd have to build trust to do that. So if you come in and just say, hey, I'm going to buy a solution and I'm going to have all these agents running and my business is going to look better in overnight, it's just not going to work. It's going to look like every other business. It's going to look like the software company. And those agents are optimized to sell you more licenses. It's kind of the end story, right? It's going to use more compute and they're going to optimize for that silo, but not understand your business.
So everything that you just walked through, I would imagine that you went through with your own company as well. I
Yes.
believe you had said to me you went from a target of $1 million in revenue per employee to a target of about $10 million per employee with AI.
That's right.
Is that right? Okay. All right. Wanted to make sure I had that right. So as you went through that,
I said you were there yet.
right? No. I recognize that. And that's the interesting part about so much of the AI stuff is many of it is, or much of it is still aspirational in nature. Yet it's aspirational at a level that is obtainable, I guess is what I would say from my observations with folks.
Yeah, well said. Well said. Well, and I love your philosophy on this, the learning philosophy. This is so new. We're all learning. And I make mistakes all the time. But I think the biggest mistake you can make in AI is not getting in the game and learning. One, to start building this brain. You take, my kids now one just turned 7, so I'm 4 and 7. Imagine if you didn't start teaching them anything until they're 4. You've just pushed the 18 years out. Now they're 22. You've got to start teaching these things. You've got to start making mistakes. There's no other way to start working with this because the system craves your data to be able to best help you as a business.
I love that example and kind of drawing your kids in and the idea of education and learning delays there. And the first thing that popped in my mind when you were talking about that would be as if I didn't start speaking or teaching someone English, and I'm just going to throw out some random dates here, and it's 1752, right? And with the pace of AI, if I wait a couple of years to dip my toe in, when I'm ready to teach them English, they're going to be speaking in 2026 vernacular, which sounds nothing like 300 years ago.
Yeah, isn't that 100? Great point. Great point. And what I hear to follow that on is I'm just going to wait because the AI is going to get better. All right, well, now the Gen AI tool got better, but it has zero context about your business. So again, I think a lot of people, and I don't expect they would understand it. I've naturally had to learn a lot about how this works. But if you have a generative AI model, which is amazing at predicting words and is amazing at human language, I'm mesmerized the conversations and the back and forth and the way it uses our language with us. But all that said, it has zero awareness unless you give it that as you're asking questions and having a back and forth. It has zero transactional history with you. So to your point, how do you build that up? And then as the oracle that you're asking that keeps getting smarter. You want to keep a constant set of learning such that you're not getting a different answer every single day because that field goal or that ball is constantly moving. But you want to have a way of getting that same answer. Sales yesterday can't change because the oracle changed, right? So you have to have a way of teaching it and then knowing that it's going to get smarter, still get the same answer. So it's a really interesting paradigm shift there too.
It absolutely is. And I think it also opens up this line of discussion, opens up the larger question of strategy in an organization and the shelf life for that. Because I was just a guest on a pod the other day. I don't do a lot of those, but they wanted to ask me about strategy and timelines. So we were talking about some of this. And one of my views is that most strategic plans, if it's an 18-month shelf life, and that assumes it's dynamic, that's a long shelf life anymore. There are no 10-year, 5-year, 3-year plans anymore. Yeah. And I think the point that I'm driving to here with a question based on what you said is that if you wait to get in the game with AI, you're not only sacrificing momentum, you're sacrificing agility, because the speed at which changes are coming down the pike now is such that there are decisions that are happening outside of your purview based on AI within your company if you've implemented it, right? So if you are not implementing AI, if you're not using these tools, you're sacrificing speed and you are increasing the level of complexity regarding decisions that your mid and senior line supervisors and managers need to make, in my view. And that's going to further drag you down and compound your or hamstring your ability to be agile and to move quicker based on market forces that are changing extremely rapidly. So I'm not sure I got myself to a question with that, but that was kind of top of mind based on what you were talking about a moment ago.
Yeah. I think you described better than I did the execution gap. You just keep falling behind.
Yes.
Other people are getting ahead faster, and it's compounding because it's smarter and faster, and they can make decisions faster, and you're still doing it the old way. If you go in wanting perfection, you won't achieve it without some failure. So you should go in saying, I'm going to start now and I'm going to fail along the way, but it's going to close the gap because others are doing it. And if I'm not, look, 98% of CEOs said, I need this. 7% have a strategy. You could plan for 18 months and build a strategy, or you could get in and do, and the strategy will form, because this is new. There's not a silver bullet strategy. If there was, we wouldn't be seeing that execution gap forming.
Right. What's that quote from Patton? I always butcher it, but it's something along the lines of, an imperfect plan violently executed today is far superior to a perfect plan executed, far down the road. Right.
Yeah.
So same idea.
I love it.
I was just going to ask you, since we're talking about this change and we're talking at a strategic level, we touched on the human component earlier, and I know you referenced we're not here to automate you out of a job. I think 26 is the year we're going to start to see an awful lot of pushback. We're already seeing it. And I've had some conversations with other folks that specialize in AI training for organizations. They focus a lot on mindset shifts. They focus a lot on demystifying the technology and reducing the level of fear. I would imagine that all of these things come up when you're working with your clients, though. And it's one thing to talk about this in the boardroom and to set the course of the company. It's another when you've got to handle those actual conversations with the workforce and the line level team members. So I'm interested, what's been your experience so far with those types of conversations with the folks that are on the front lines doing the work?
Yeah. I suppose there's a carrot and stick approach. You could see the CEOs who will take the approach of, you will use this tool, you will report back to me if you didn't, because I'll see that you have zero chat history, and we know how that ends. So that can work. And then there's more of the carrot. How do I lead someone? How do I show them or start to pull them towards how this can make their life easier, better, help them use it to achieve the outcomes they want or the business wants. I think largely the people I talk to don't want to do the repetitive, manual, non-creative tasks. So I think there's a natural inclination to want to work with this stuff. Once you get over the initial awe of wow, it just did that. I think if you can get people there, they want to work with it. That's generally my my belief. I will say it's changing for me what I value in the workforce. Resumes are less important to me than they ever were. Raw curiosity and creativity. Given that the answers already exist in these tools, the sort of book answers, but it's what do you do with that, and how creative, how can you 10x yourself with these tools? So I personally value that in our business. Now, granted, we're in the business of bringing AI to other people, so we're at the tip of the spear there. But I do think that's really important as people are thinking about careers and career changes, and as we work with interns. We do a lot of interns just to try to pull them through and teach them how this works in business. But I think that skill set of being told what to do versus I'm going to be creative and I've got this set of tools to work with, that's a shift. And so that, I don't know that there's certain people are going to love that, other people aren't. And there's different points in the career where you may say, I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to shift. I just want to, I want to kind of see this through. I've got 3 more years left. And so that piece of the workforce, I think, that'll be interesting how that plays out.
I couldn't agree more. Our time is starting to get close to an end here. And so I want to shift gears for maybe our last subject point of conversation and ask you about values, because this is something that I've been tracking very closely since the fourth quarter of 2025. Anthropic, the company behind Claude, came out with the Soul document, as they called it, in late 25, and in early 26 in January, they came out and published their 77-page, what they call the Constitution. This is an area that fascinates me. And it fascinates me precisely because of what we talked about earlier with respect, and there's a parallel here to what you talked about when companies buy ERPs, they buy large software systems, you're asking for the same pre-formatted processes that everybody else is using. And I think there's a parallel here with the values and the judgment calls that AI is making with respect to the values that are inculcated into those different models. In my view, I think Anthropic is doing a very good job of trying to grapple with this question and being relatively transparent. But I am curious whether this conversation comes up much with your clients in terms of organizational values. How do we infuse those into the tools that we're using? How do we make sure that what is important to us and what we value as an organization, mission, vision, values, is then seeded into the automated AI systems and tools that we're using? I don't expect that you've got a silver bullet answer, but I'm interested in your experience on this because I think this is an undeveloped conversation that is super critical that not enough people are having yet.
Yeah, I love that you've always been, I think, thought leading on where does ethics, value, where does that meet AI? Because to your point, we're trusting the answers that come from these oracles, and whoever's trained, there's a bias inherently in how it's trained, and for example, we don't use any of the Chinese models. I don't trust what's in there. And that's just a stake we've put in the ground. Because of the reasons we said. The model is trained by people and processes and on data I don't know. And so I don't trust that the answers are going to be based in fact. Now, that it doesn't change that you can have biases by the programming team and the data sets that we're training these on, even in the, Anthropic or OpenAI or Gemini or any of those. So the question is real, and that's where the most important thing you can do as a business, and this is different than a consumer level. When I'm interacting with a Gemini or an AI on my desktop, I have my own values to gut check it, and I have my own version of the fact. And I encourage everybody not to take what it says at face value. They're aimed to please, they're designed to make you feel like you're right and kind of pull you through a conversation and please you. So I encourage people individually to challenge them and ask, is that real? Do I believe that? I mean, they're still prediction engines, so they'll get the wrong answer. And if you go with it, it's just going to perpetuate that. So what does a business do? Because me as an individual, I can do that. I have that choice. But a business can't
Right.
put those guardrails in. So if you don't have core values and vision and mission and all that stuff as guardrails, your agent and employees who are interacting with this are going to get biased answers, or they're going to get their own answers, which don't necessarily reflect the values of the company. So it all goes back to building a corpus of information, a brain that is absolutely critical, that sits in front and independent of any of these models, where that lives and those guardrails live, and they're indisputable. You cannot deviate from those. That way we don't have there's stories you can flip open the news. I saw one. Air Canada was held liable by the Supreme Court for their agents. They said, well, we didn't write them. Well, sorry, they're acting on your behalf. They gave $2,000 refunds. You're liable for that. So how do you build, and it's critical, what is the brain that you're building that guards against that from one of these models that we're all using? Eventually, I think everyone will start to build their own smaller AI models that we use that have that inherently built in. But right now, what is it? The cost of doing that is just, it's just not feasible for anybody. So we all use these massive models. They're great, but we get their biases. So I love that you've brought this up, because this is where it's going, is how do we know what's coming? How do we know why we got the answer? What data was put in there? And so that's where, as a business leader, I think you need a business AI, which is separate than what we use, like a co-pilot on your desktop, or something that helps me build a better PowerPoint or write emails faster. I need a business rules that it follows.
Well said. All right. Let me bring us the full circle back around to where we started here with a parting shot for you. We started talking about the 1 and the 12. Let's talk about the other 11 as a final thought here for our listeners. Yeah. So if I'm 11 of the 12 and I am not doing what I probably should be doing in AI land right now, and I'm a CEO listening to this, what's something you'd recommend if I'm in that 11 category that I should do in the next 30 days to start to move the needle in my organization?
Yep. Well, one, take ownership yourself. Our head of sales, of course, this comes from the sales guys, said, either you think this is strategic or not. If you don't think it is, so you're in the 2% even, I don't think this matters. Put your head in the sand. Let's don't have the conversation. If you think it's strategic and you believe this has the potential to impact your business in a massive way, where else would you have that happen and not own that as the CEO? So make that decision that you're going to own it, and not punt it to IT, because this is not an IT problem. The IT part's easy. So in the next 30 days, I would say, do I care about this? Is it strategic? Will it disrupt my business? And if so, I'm going to own it. At that point, you'd say, do I want to own it by buying a bunch of piecemeal tactical solutions, or am I going to build or buy a solution that is a platform, a brain, an AI system that runs in my company and learns what my company operates like, how I want it to operate, and everybody can use it? I would get to that in the next 30 days. So where that ends for the mid-market is, do I build one? Because you could build what we've done. You absolutely could. Or do I buy one? We're the only system out there that does what we do. We call it a BAO. There'll be others that do it. But if you get to, I want this to be a strategic component of my organization, I'm going to own it as a CEO. Now I got to go solve that problem. That's what I would do in the next 30 days, is reason your way through those answers and then start making decisions around that, which will lead you to, all right, now I have a strategic plan, and it won't be, I'm going to just start buying things. It'll be, I'm going to start with a plan in mind, and we're going to ebb and flow on this journey, because it will change as technologies emerge.
Well said, and sage parting advice from Chris Happ, CEO of Virtuous AI. Chris, I appreciated our time together today. If someone wants to learn more about Virtuous AI and your offerings, if they want to get in touch with you, what is the best way for them to do that?
Yep. It's virtuousai.com. And if they want to email me, I'm chapp, CHAPP, at virtuousai.com.
Very good. Thank you so much. This was a great conversation. I appreciated your perspective and your time today.
Likewise.
And for our listeners out there, thank you for once again listening to AI for the C-Suite. If this episode was useful, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, follow us on LinkedIn, and check out AIfortheC-Suite.com. Until next time, keep your algorithms running, your leadership evolving, and your AI in check. Take care, everybody.